Hello and welcome to Tonight at 8 from the RSGB. Amateur radio is a diverse hobby embracing different technologies which appeal to a wide range of people, young and old. It's also a very accessible hobby, even to those who have difficulties with sight or mobility, for example. Tonight we're going to meet several radio amateurs who each have different stories to share with us, 3 of who have disabilities themselves, and another who was inspired to get into the hobby because of people he met through his work at a charity who support people with sight difficulties. Now, if you're watching this on Monday the 3rd of June, then this is live, and you can ask questions of our guests or make comments on either YouTube chat or BATC messaging at any time during the presentation or at the end. Please include your first name and call sign if you have one within every message. And note that you can make this video stream fill your screen on most devices, usually by double clicking on the picture or pressing the full screen button. Well, first we're going to meet Nigel Lim, M7FFU, who lost much of his sight during a motorbike accident in 2015. Welcome to Tonight at 8, Nigel.
Welcome. Hello everybody. Hello David.
Good to see you. So, as all good stories, can you start at the beginning? What changed for you, apart from the sort of more obvious things, with your motorbike accident all those years ago?
Well, obviously my life totally changed. I had my own business for 27 years. I could drive a car, ride a motorbike legally, and as I say, be self-sufficient and everything. Then on the 27th of December 2015. I had a freak accident racing at Mablethorpe Beach, actually, on a speedway bike, and suffered major brain damage. And when I woke out the coma, I'm left partially sighted.
Wow, that is life-changing, obviously. So when and at what point did you think about amateur radio being a hobby?
Only last year, actually. I'd wanted to be a radio amateur since I was about 13, which was 1978. But life took over and everything. We're actually downsizing into a bungalow now from this. We've got a large place here. So I thought, what else can I do as a hobby rather than doing the motorbike and all the stuff I do, and I thought, you know what, my wife is studying for a master's degree, and I said, you know what, I shall do some studying with you over the winter period. So I started probably last September, might have been, and I took my exam on the 8th of December, and
I think we might have lost Nigel temporarily there. I hope he'll come back. Let me just
obviously
leave him. Sorry, Nigel, we just lost you a moment. We'll come back to you for that because we hope we're not going to lose you there. But so we just lost a little bit of it there. You were studying for the exam along with your wife. No? Okay. I think we've got a problem. Maybe your internet, Nigel. So if you can hear me.
Yeah, so I was studying. Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay. I think we're going to have to leave it there. I'm sorry, Nigel. If you can hear me, though.
Your video's frozen, but I can hear you.
Right. Oh, okay. Okay. Well, we can go with sound only. Fine.
Yeah.
Okay. Back to you then.
Yes.
Sorry, we did lose you completely. We'll just try one more time with you if we can. Otherwise, if we do lose you again, maybe you could just check your household if anybody's using the internet or something like that.
I can't hear that if you're talking.
You can't hear me now. Okay, I think we're going to have to return to you, Nigel. Sorry about that. Actually, we've lost Nigel completely now on our feed. So I'm very sorry. I do hope that we'll be able to return to Nigel and hear more of his story later. But in that case, I think we're now going to go and meet our next presenter, who's Steve Dodd, M0SNZ. Welcome to Tonight at 8, Steve. Can you tell us your story, please?
Hi, Dave. Hi, everyone. Yeah, so I'm a Kiwi, as you can probably tell from my accent. I've been living in the UK for the last 20-something years. I've had my full license since the beginning of last year. My intermediate license for a while before then. But about 6 years ago, I was in a swimming accident, and ended up having a spinal cord injury, which has left me mostly paralyzed. I'm wheelchair bound, and I can use my arms. You can see they're a bit funny. I've got some use in my hands and arms, but being able to twist knobs on a radio is quite awkward. I don't know. Have you got any other questions for me? Or
Absolutely. But we'd like to hear about how you've got into the hobby, as you say. It would be nice to hear as well about some of the projects that you've been involved with as well. I know. And many of our viewers now will be RSGB members, and in fact they'll have seen an article from you just in May's edition of Radcon, May 2024. We can just show you a brief insert of that. So maybe you'd like to tell us a little bit about this project.
Yeah, sure. So that's my house there in the middle of the photo there on the left. I've got a newer antenna, a little bit bigger, but it's basically running a normal little budget antenna rotator that you can get on, I don't know, Martin Lynch or any of the other amateur radio stores. And what I've done there is I've hooked it up to an infrared dongle. And then written some software that allows you to integrate sending the IR codes to the rotator from almost any other amateur radio software, things that integrate with the hamlib libraries. So it allows me to, for example, integrate with satellite control programs and track satellites across the sky. And perhaps I'll give you a little bit of a demo later on of how I can operate with it.
Yeah, we'd love to see that.
But I've also done something else which I'd like to focus on a little bit more tonight, which is I've written a remote programmer I've got an ICOM 9700, and I rely on computers. I'll tell you a little bit about how I got into radio in a bit, but I've always been fond of computers and electronics, and I taught myself electronics, and then I decided to get into radio, probably mainly to do with computers and networking, because of course radios underpins all of the communication technologies there, doesn't it? So I wanted to get into the data modes, and I had a feel that I'd like to do satellite work as well. So that's my main focus. But all of the programs that you can buy for controlling your rigs and stuff like that, they're great, but most of them have some sort of limitations, and I need, for reasons you can see, to have full remote control. And in fact, I operate my radio from this position here, sitting in front of my laptop. I don't ever have to go into the room. And so I've written a programmer using the ICOM CIV CI5 or CIV, however you want to pronounce it, interface over the serial cable. And I can control all the connections as well as turning it off and on and things like that. So, can
I just ask you, Steve, just one thing that's curious. A lot of people watching, I think, will also have seen this sort of remote control software for people like ICOM produce their own. So, what did you find that software couldn't do for you with your disabilities?
Well, so as I said, I'd like to focus on satellites. So I need to be able to change connections, and there's different communication modes across satellites. Like, for example, the IO 117 or Green Cube satellite uses packet radio, and so you need to send data over a USB connection. Other satellite communications via voice or FM, so you're needing to set up your radio so you can speak into a microphone or set tones and stuff like that on the audio, so that the satellite can understand that the radio signals needs to be repeated and things like that. So there's lots of little bits and pieces. I settled on a piece of software because I use a Mac. I settled on a piece of software called SDR Control, which is really nice, and I'll show it to you in a minute. But it was limited. It doesn't do Doppler. It can't send up the connectors on the ICOM radio. If I need to power on or power off, it wouldn't work. I can't turn on and off my preamps, all sorts of stuff like that. So I'll show it to you in a bit. I'll do it now if you like.
Shall I share that'd be lovely to show it now. Yeah, absolutely. So if you could share your screen with us, and then Tammy will bring that back. Just a reminder to those of you watching at home now, this is live if you're watching this on Monday the 3rd of June, and we'd love to get your questions and comments at any time. So whether it's while somebody is speaking or whether it's right at the very end, then do get them into us, and we'll either read them during the presentations or save them till the end. We'd love to hear from you. We know quite a lot of you are watching now. So we can now share the screen from Steve, and we're now going to show your computer screen, Steve, so we can see that.
Yeah, you can see this. Fantastic. So the first thing I'd like to show you is I've automated my whole house, really. So because I can't do things like close blinds or open doors or turn on lights, everything is smart home. And so I've put it all together in Home Assistant, and I didn't see any reason why my radio system would be any different. And so you can see here I've got some basic controls. I can turn the physical power off and on to my antenna rotators. I can actually click a button and rotate my antenna. I don't know whether it's going to actually show you in the video below, but there's my antenna sitting on my roof there, and it may or may not, the video sometimes is delayed on this screen, may or may not rotate. It's not going to, but it's just because the video is delayed. But basically what I've done is I've clicked on the north.
Oh, you can see it moving now, Steve, actually.
There it is there, it's turning around, yeah. So that's basically sent an infrared signal to my antenna rotator, and then it's going to come back around and point to the north. That's, I've also got the other bits and pieces like, the solar indexes and the maximal usable frequencies and tropo indexes and stuff like that, which is nice to see, and some weather stats on the right. So I use that quite a bit. But going into the operating mode, you can see I've got a camera here on my radio. It's currently in a standby mode, I think. I've powered it off, and I run all of my software in a virtual machine, a Windows virtual machine here. And I've got my program running, and it's a command line program, which allows me to essentially script it or just run commands as I like from the command line. I could put a user interface on it, and I could turn it into a full-blown remote radio program ultimately at the end of the day, but it's good how it is for me at the moment, so just as and when. But for the first example, I can run the program and turn my radio on. Now, that's not that special in itself. A lot of the other software programs will turn it on, but I can turn it on from a cold start. I don't need power. I can turn it on right from the very beginning, and bang, as you can see, it's just powered itself on. And as I said, it allows me to do all sorts of things, like I can set connectors, or I can change the modes. And I'll just give you an example that you can actually see on the screen rather than anything else. But
so you've created a virtual video link there to your radio to actually look at the radio screen, haven't you?
I have. Okay. So I can see what do I do? I can see my radio and my antenna. Yes. I need to pass an on command. Just turn it into set mode, for example.
You know what, Steve? I love it when I see software people at work and they make it look so easy, just a few key taps. But when I try it, it's never as straightforward. It's lovely to see you work like this.
Yeah, and I mean, I don't know whether you can't see, but essentially I was right-handed before. I control everything from my middle finger on my left hand, so I can use a mouse, and I rely heavily on copy and paste. But as you can see there, I've just clicked my radio over into satellite mode, so it's ready to go in satellite mode. But the program I've written has got lots of other features as well. So just being able to set up my radio and have complete control over it remotely in front of a laptop enables me to actually use it. So as I said, I use a program called SDR Control, which is this program here. It's also sending signals to my radio, which is why you saw my radio change. But I have a lot of features here, so I can turn on the external preamp or turn on the internal one, but I can't actually do the connections behind the scenes. So this is an example of why I needed to to write the additional software to use it. I have more full control using the command line than I do here, but I have nice features here like the waterfall and stuff like that. But it's all open source. I think you're going to show the slide later, but there's a demo of me running the program there on YouTube. I'm pretty dry in my videos, so just forgive that. But I'm just showing a demo of it working. There's another demo of the antenna controller system.
Yeah, well, we'll show that slide now, Steve, actually, while you're talking, if that's all right. Just everybody at home. So Steve has kindly made this software open source, which means really that it's free for anybody who'd like to download it and use it uncommercially, which is very good of you, for considering you spent all that time developing it, Steve.
Yeah, well, I don't mind. It's not commercially polished, as you say, but I mean it works well and certainly enables me to use my radio.
So that's how people can contact you and also download that wonderful software. Thank you very much for sharing. Going just back, if we could, to your injury, I believe you already had your intermediate license at that time. So
yeah, I did. So I'm just going to stop sharing my screen. Shall we go back to the?
That would be great. Yes.
Yeah. So yeah, I had my intermediate license, which was lucky. Having a disability, you have to rely on like mine. You have to rely on it. All of the stuff I have there, someone else has plugged it in. Someone else has put the antenna on the roof, or bits and pieces, and I've had to plan it all out and get someone else to do it who doesn't necessarily know what they're doing. I think I settled on just a builder to install the antenna, and then a TV satellite installer to build my antenna and then mount it. I had to talk them all through it. The intermediate license is you need to do a practical, don't you? And I think I would struggle doing that. I did my full since my injury, and even that I struggled a little bit. But things like having the advanced manual in a book form was quite difficult. I have got better, but things like turning pages in a book doesn't work.
Yes,
so
course, yeah.
The first thing I did was I ripped it apart and scanned it all up and made a PDF out of it. But RSGB, if you're listening, electronic versions of those license books would be amazing. Even Radcom, the electronic format that they've got there could be improved some. I think would make it easier for me to be able to read it.
Well, I know for a fact that the RSGB are looking at making and changes their electronic Radcom. And so, if I may, Steve, in the next few days, I'll put people in touch who work for the RSGB who do looking at all of this project to make sure that they make those electronic copies of Radcom and maybe some of the manuals, training manuals, as well as helpful as they can to people with limited ability, mobility in their hands. Yeah. So thanks for that point. One thing I just, by the way, go back to, and it may have been different when you took it, but actually there is no need now for practical assessments at any of the three levels. That was something that changed when the exams went all online for the pandemic, and there's no longer a need for that. But nevertheless, it's incredible that you've studied for the full as well, because the full license is quite another leap from the intermediate. And it sounds like you're getting the most from your hobby through the adaptations that you've made.
Yeah, it was great. It was great to be able to do it remotely. I did the bath-based distance learning with Steve, which was fantastic. And then did set the exam, and it was easy. Just I had to get someone to set up the videos and stuff like that they keep an eye on you with. But once that was all set up, it was just a matter of powering through. Yeah.
You do make it sound easy, just like your software, but I don't think it was. Steve, thank you very much. It was wonderful sharing your story with us. Thank you. And of course, you're staying until the end, when we hope to answer questions from people at home and any points or comments at all from them. So do stay with us. Thanks very much so far.
Nice one. Thank you.
Thank you, Steve. Well, now we're going to try and go back to Nigel. We had to quickly shuffle all our slides and things like that when we couldn't get him. I hope his internet's behaving now. And Nigel, I hope you can hear me.
Yeah, I can hear you now. Sorry about that.
No, that's all right. That's all right. We're glad to have you back. I think we didn't get very far, in fact, so I don't know if you don't mind. Maybe we can just go back. You told us you had a motorbike accident in 2015, I think. That left you with brain damage and partially blind in both eyes. And then you started telling us about, amateur radio. So
that's you asked the question. Why did I do it? I think was the question. And as I say, since I was 13, I'd always wanted to be a radio am. After using CB radio, illegal CB radio, AM, but life came across and took over, and as I say, we're actually going to buy a bungalow. We're selling this place because where we live is quite big, to a bungalow. So I needed a hobby that I could do from a bungalow rather than my vintage tractors and all my motorbikes and everything. So I thought, you know what, take your radio amateur's license, Nigel, and then you can have a hobby that you can do from a bungalow. So as I say, Julie, my wife, started studying for a master's degree last year. So I said, I shall do some studying along with you. So I started about September, I think it was. And so I inquired on Facebook of courses and things, and there were Essex Ham. I bought the manual from RSGB, the foundation manual. I can read certain font with certain equipment, so I read the manual and then listened to the live videos from Essex Ham. And between listening and watching a bit, as much as I could on YouTube, and reading the manual, that allowed me then to apply for apply for the exam. And but what there was so I've always been a scientist and an engineer and good at mathematics and stuff. But it came clear a few years ago that I'm now, I don't know what you call it, whether it's number dyslexic or not, but just say I write your phone number down on a piece of paper, but because even if you can't see, if you shut your eyes, you can write on a bit of paper. I think you'll agree with that. Well, I can still write. I might not be able to see what I've written, but I can still write. But it come clear to the blind man that I'd write your telephone number down, and there'd be numbers jiggled up the wrong way round. But I dismissed it because I could cope with not doing numbers and things. But what actually reared its ugly head, when I was doing my mock exams, once I'd done some mock exams and I looked at the results weren't as good as what I thought they should be. So I investigated myself. I investigated why. And it come clear that just say I knew it was answer A. Question one, it was answer A. And I 100% knew it was answer A. On some of the questions, I was pressing the button for D. The brain weren't telling my fingers what to do properly. So now that put a question mark on taking the exam, because I might get the answer right, but press the wrong button on the exam. So when it come to the exam time, David Wilson, I think his name were, the man that invigilated me, he says, any questions before we start? So I explained this to him. So he says, well, would your wife like to be your scribe? He said, you tell her the answer. I can hear he could hear that I said A, B, or C, or whatever. Julie would press the correct button, and that took that discrepancy away from taking the exam. So that made it very accessible, especially for myself. So that was great from David's point of view and RSGB's point of view. So I thought that was quite cool. And, vision loss and brain damage affects everybody in different ways. So vision loss is a spectrum, not an absolute, like brain damage is a spectrum, not an absolute. And I'm sure physical disability is a spectrum, not an absolute. So, there's no one size fits all. And it was interesting to listen to him about doing the programs and things to move his antennas and do his radio. That's insane. That was great to listen to that. And I don't have to do that. I've got a Zygo X6100. It's got quite a big screen on it with a waterfall. But my eyesight problem, it's not always about the size of writing or whatever. It's about the contrast. And that Zygo 6100, the screen is very contrast. The numbers are contrast against the background. So I quite like the Zygo, and I'm using it quite well, But obviously I have a magnifying glass to see certain stuff. I joined the RAIBC, I think it's called, if I get it right. Because somebody says, join them. They deal with, visually impaired people, and you can get equipment for them. But you can only get equipment from them if it's means tested, which is quite rightly so. It's means tested. I don't come under that category, so I couldn't get any help from them per se. But I think the RAIBC is a great charity to enable visually impaired and disabled people become radio amateurs. I have a total blind friend in Chicago who's a radio amateur, and his radio talks to him, and he can communicate what frequency he wants by telling it what to do. Thankfully for myself, I don't need that, but I did notice when I went out this weekend, I was in Wales on holiday, and I did a bit of portable. The sun on the screen made it so I couldn't see the screen. So I've now, because until then I've always been in a workshop where the lights are low. So now I've got to try and make like a shield that comes over so it stops the light reflecting. So I learn every day. Every time I use it, I learn something else. And I don't know about anybody else. If it's just me with my type of brain damage, but I have lost the ability to listen to someone and write at the same time. So when I ask you, can you give me a call sign? I probably have to ask you 5 times to say it, because or ask you to say it slowly so I can write the call sign down. And I write. I think there's some pictures.
I was going to say, Nigel, we can actually show you a picture now. Show viewers a picture of what your logs sort of look like. You sent that to us.
Look at that, 2-year-old, like a 2-year-old, isn't it?
I don't know. It's my writing's even more unreadable according to my wife. So. No, but it's good that you're managing to get by in the hobby with that. I mean, we've got a lovely picture of you here, operating actually with a friend of yours, I believe.
Well, that's with Darren, yeah. So I passed my exam on the 8th of December, and then I met Darren through a local Facebook site, because Darren's from Lincoln. We're both from Lincolnshire. And they said they were coming down to do some poker on the beach. Well, I live on the coast. I live in Sutton-on-Sea on the coast. So he says, I'll pick you up when we come down. So I said, that'd be great. Anyway, they put the tent up and put the radio in, then just give me the microphone and said, start calling CQ. And within first few minutes, I've been talking to North Carolina, I think, and South Dakota, and the into Norway and the Azores. So it was a baptism of fire for me. They just put me straight into it, which I have to say I react to things like that. I'd rather be put straight into the fire. but yes, so that was probably about a week, 2 weeks after I passed my license. So that was good. That was a good time, and we've been down since. We went down a few weeks ago. So and I've made my own portable station, antenna. I've made a ground spike and a tripod system, and obviously the mag mount. So I'm going to go down to the beach when the sun comes up, and do a bit of poaching from the beach, I think. So, but because our beach is on the Potter, it's on the King Charles walk around Britain. So I can go down there to do some poaching. So I'm looking forward to doing that.
Yeah, lots of compliments coming for you, I must say, Nigel, as well. Looking on here, we're showing at the moment the picture of this. I think you said this is in your garden, and this is of the station. Yeah. It looks like a 705. I know it's your Zygo, isn't it? Your Zygo radio.
Zygo. Yeah, absolutely. And if I can just say this, I recycle everything. I call myself Orinoco, of like the Wombles. In fact, I've even had a message of Orinoco to say I'm a good boy. But I recycle everything. So the ground spike was a piece of tube from an old deck chair. I bent it in a pipe bender to 90 degrees to mount the antenna on. That box, before my accident, I was a semi-pro photographer. And that box was my camera box, and it's still in my workshop. So I opened it up, and my radio gear fits. I don't know if I sent you a picture of it, really. With I've got my lid open, and every aspect of my radio gear fits into that box. Absolutely superb. So as I say, I'm a recycler, and I love recycling. The batteries that I use aren't brand new batteries. See the Zygo, yeah, that's right. So there's a motorbike battery in there. That's an old battery off my Triumph Bonneville, one that the bike that I set one of the records on a couple of years ago. So everything's recycled, and I do it on the cheap. And it's not about the money. I just like to do things on the cheap. I like to I just like to do things with as little expense as possible. And as you can see with the book, with the writing, although I've been encouraged to download the hammers, the HMRS thing onto my tablet for submitting a POTA when I do it. So I am listening to people. I do take advice. Whether I act on the advice is debatable, but I do listen to all advice, and it's quite welcome. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
but
lovely.
Whether I act on it is a different matter.
Not at all. Well, I mean, you're glad to know that the friend in that picture that we showed earlier on in the tent, Darren 2E0GFY, says you did very well, Nigel. He's actually on the YouTube chat and watching this now, so he's congratulating you.
Good. I have posted that I'm on live for people to listen to. So
yes, lovely. And I believe the most recent adventure is just in the last few days, because you sent us another picture.
Yeah, as I say, we went on holiday with all the family. There was 26 of us. Yeah, we was in Wales. In actual fact, we stopped at the place we stopped at was massive. Obviously, there were 26 of us. And it was the birthplace of Lawrence of Arabia. And I don't know if this trivia is any use to anybody, but Lawrence of Arabia was a motorcyclist, the avid one. And he rode Brough Superiors, which were the Rolls Royce of motorbikes, and they were made in Nottingham. Anyway, he had an accident where he hit some children. And I'm not sure if there was a child died or not, but he crashed and suffered brain damage, and subsequently died from the brain damage. And that's one of the reasons helmets was kind of brought to the fore. So that was quite random that I'd suffered major brain damage from riding motorcycles, and we ended up stopping in the house where he was born. And so I took me antenna, as you can see there. But I think we've had quite a lot of solar flares, so the bands was blinking dead as a dodo. But I did manage to talk to contact a chap from Italy, and I couldn't quite get his call sign. I asked him a few times, and I couldn't write it down properly. So I thought, just give up as a bad job, Nigel. But I did get through to, and as I say, there was mountains one side and the forest the other side of the van. So I was not likely to get out very far, actually. So I think I did pretty well getting out to Italy like I did.
You did very well. This has been the past weekend. It's been National Field Day. I know they've had quite a lot of challenges as people up and down the land try and work. But anyway, I'm glad you had a good holiday. Nigel, it's been a fascinating story so far. It's not goodbye though, of course, because you'll be staying until the end. Lots of wonderful comments. Really compliments on that you're an inspiration to people and overcoming disabilities. And several people mentioning about non-paper versions of the manuals. They are actually available on Kindle, so you can buy any of the training manuals on Kindle. And also, of course, the RAIBC as well are an important organisation, as many of you mentioned. Unfortunately, they were unable to join us tonight on here, but we'll certainly be doing. I think we have a caption for them.
Can I say one thing though, David?
Yes, of course.
I'm still on 10 watts. I know I can have 25 now, but the Zygo is only 10 watt output, and I don't want to change at the moment. When I actually settle into a bungalow and settle in and everything, then I might treat myself to a nice home base, to be fair. But at the moment, I'm all on 10 watts. So the fact I got to Italy at the weekend in Wales on 10 watts, that made me smile even more.
It sounds like you're a diehard QRP fan, of which there are many, and a challenge of which that. But I won't start that argument. We'll be here all night, literally, with other people. Here's that link to the RAIBC, by the way. As I mentioned, they couldn't join us tonight, but this is a link for anybody who's watching this who knows somebody who's visually impaired. They offer a great deal of resources, including audiobook version of the training manuals. And also, I believe, in different formats as well. So RAIBC.org.uk.
I'll tell you what else to do, David, for the viewers to hear. They do I say every magazine, that's a big statement, but they do a large amount of magazines on Audible. Radcom, Practical Wireless, all the popular magazines that they do on Audible. So in actual fact, I forget how much it were to join. Might have been £10 or £15. It was nothing actually, and you get a number then, and then you can use that number as a password to get onto the system. And yes, so I've been listening. I do have the Radcom magazine come through the post, and they say with the magnifier lens I can read it, but I do listen to it on my tablet as well. So every magazine out there they do. So I'll stop at that because I understand we've got a load of people on, and so I'll stop at that. But I just thought I'd let you know that.
Well, you're only going to stop for now because we'll be coming back to you later, Nigel, and lots of other people as well. But we do want to meet our next person now, and that is Keith Hotchkiss, G0FEA, who became a wheelchair user after an infection left him with a lower leg weakness in 2001. So welcome to Tonight at 8, Keith.
Good evening, everybody, and hello, David.
Yes, good to see you. So, your story then. Go ahead, please. Tell us how this affected you.
Okay, well, I had been fit and well. I've been a radio amateur for a long period of time. I got my old class A and B license back in the about 1984. So I was a teenager. Woke up one day and all of a sudden I had the inability to use my legs. Very strange. Went to hospital. Things got a little bit worse. Unfortunately suffered a cardiac arrest, but survived that. So consider myself to be very fortunate. And yeah, that's kind of it really. Ended up using a wheelchair to mobilise. But the strange thing is, I don't consider myself disabled, which is in my mindset. I'm still able-bodied until I want to put an aerial up, and then I absolutely see where Steve's coming from when he was saying, you just need to rely on other people. Thankfully, those other people for me are local radio amateurs and people that I know. So they're very, very good. They'll turn around and say, look, if you want help, you want something, then give us a shout. As long as you supply tea, coffee, or something stronger, then we'll help you out. And that's how we get by.
Yeah, and you've been able to give back as well, haven't you? When we chatted a few days ago, you were saying how important volunteering has been for you as well, and how good it is for mental health. And although you're getting people to help you, radio amateurs helping you, you're also helping the radio amateur community in something else that you do.
Yeah, so I volunteered for the Bletchley Park, the GB3RS National Radio Centre, which if you haven't been, please go. It's amazing. The guys and girls that work there and volunteer there do an amazing job publicising what amateur radio is about, and also publicising how radio amateurs helped during the code breaking period. And it was really quite good to be there and share my experiences with people and talk to them about amateur radio, get them enthused, encouraged about the hobby, and see that actually being in a wheelchair wasn't a barrier. So we had a lot of people, and still do see a lot of people going through the door that have various forms of disability. And this lets them know that, no matter who you are, where you come from, what your abilities are, we can actually get you into the hobby. And that was really, really good.
So this is the National Radio Centre at Bletchley Park, which the RSGB, of course, manage and run. And how often do you get down there?
Well, I was going down there quite regularly, and unfortunately I pulled back from that because I then took on a role of the lecture coordinator for the RSGB convention, which is something else that I do, which is fascinating because we have so many really, really clever, intelligent, smart people in this hobby who just seem to know so much about everything. They are people that I could get onto an email or make a phone call to and say, look, we've heard that you're an expert in this field. Would you be able to give a talk at the convention? And they'd come back and say, yep, fine. What time do you want me? What day do you want me? How's my presentation going to be given? And we'd then program them in. So it was absolutely brilliant. So hopefully we'll be doing that again this year, and seeing who we can bring along and get in to give another excellent convention. Yeah,
thank you. What else would you have to say, Keith, about people who have something like a life-changing event, like an accident or an illness, as you did, when it unexpected, you couldn't plan for it? How do you start to recover and go forwards? And how important is a hobby for you at that sort of time?
So my day job now is I'm a university academic. I lecture at a university to undergrads, postgrads and doctoral students. And if you look at the research that's come out from around the world, there's loads and loads of evidence to suggest that actually having hobbies is good for your health, your physical health and also mental health. So in 2021, there was a Japanese public health research paper that was conducted by 11 academics. They surveyed 56,000 adults between the ages of 40 and 69. And they found that by having a hobby, you actually reduce your risk of heart attack and stroke. So it's great against cardiovascular disease. And part of the reason for that is there is a decrease in the amount of stress that you actually suffer when you've got an alternative to your normal hustle and bustle of daily life. So there is increasing evidence. There was another survey done in 2009 that looked at people over the age of 65, and they found that those with hobbies compared to those with no hobbies actually had a better rate of not having depression. So it's been proven there that if you actually have a hobby that takes you away from stresses that you may have in your everyday work life or your surroundings, it actually helps reduce your mental illness or susceptibility to mental illness. So there's a lot of information coming out about that. Some may say, well, that's fine, but we have to pass an exam to get licensed. Surely that's going to increase my stress levels. But what the research shows is actually by passing the exam, you decrease your stress because you increase your satisfaction. You start to realize that you can achieve something that you set time and effort on, and you get a release of endorphins and dopamine as well, which are chemicals that make you happy. So in actual fact, while I don't want someone to turn around and say, hang about, Keith, I did the exam, you told me I'd feel happier, that's not what my doctorate is in. I want to say that, there is evidence that suggests if you do undertake a hobby like being a radio amateur, in actual fact, you're more likely to be happier than someone that doesn't. So for me, having amateur radio as a release to other things that are going on in my life, other ways of conversing with people, sharing a common interest, takes away from some of the other things that are happening in your life. So if you suddenly do find yourself feeling quite down or depressed, in actual fact, sharing a similar hobby with someone else around the world is probably a good thing to do.
Yeah, so the communications aspect then of the hobby, as well as the social aspects of the people helping you get aerials up and things like that. But that's where the actual hobby itself, the communications, I suppose, makes you feel less isolated. I mean, it sounds like you do get out and about quite a bit, but there are people, of course, with mobility issues and maybe they can hardly leave the house. And that's where, presumably, you'd say that amateur radio is a good hobby to have?
Well, radio amateurs are generally people that want to converse. They're people that want to talk or want to make communication, be it on CW, FT8, RTTY, any of these modes. And because of that, we're able to engage with others. And that engagement with others, even if we do things like contests, where people have the thrill of the chase, that's quite an exciting thing for some people. And that's a way of engaging with others in that like-minded hobby. So yes, there's lots to be said for having the hobby that communicates and shares with people. Having a net once a week, catching up with people, sharing what's gone on, even if it was a daily net, something like that. All of these things help and certainly encourage us to talk and communicate and share, and make sure that everybody's in a good place, really.
Yeah, good. And of course, looking back in the last few terrible years of the pandemic, Get on the Air to Care was also a great way to meet other people and not feel alone.
Yeah, there were lots of cases reported that amateurs were talking, and we saw this in a number of people taking the exam. The exam numbers increased during COVID because people saw this as a way of engaging in a new hobby and engaging with others in a similar situation. People couldn't go out, so they were able to talk and share their thoughts.
Yeah, wonderful. Well, Keith, thank you very much for sharing your story with us, and thanks for the work that you do for the RSGB as well in helping get a lot of our talks and things together. We're now going to meet our final person we're going to meet tonight of the team of 4, and this is Dave Wilson, MD0NKX, who is the Technology and Accessibility Lead at Sight Matters, a charity on the Isle of Man. Hello, good evening to you, Dave.
Hi, good evening, David, and hello to everybody out there.
Yeah, good to see you. So your story is a little bit different from the other 3 presenters because they're all radio amateurs, and despite their disabilities or accidents and things like that, they've managed to keep hold of the hobby and they're using it. I believe you did this in a different way. You work for Sight Matters, so maybe you just tell us a bit about your charity first.
Yeah, so our charity is based here in the Isle of Man. So we're called Sight Matters, and we look after around about 700 people on the Isle of Man here who've got sight problems. I've been with the organisation for nearly 20 years. I had hair and ribs when I first joined. It's a fantastic organisation, and we're very lucky to have a fantastic centre here with lots of space and amazing grounds. Yeah, my story is a wee bit different. I got into radio in lockdown, actually, and David mentioned there that the numbers of exams kind of shot up during lockdown. I was never really interested in radio up to that point. A lot of my friends when I was younger were into CB radio and things like that, but I've always been interested in electronics and technology. But I was hunting around the internet in a bored minute, and I came across a YouTube video, I think, about amateur radio. And I thought, well, that looks quite interesting. And some more investigation led me to Essex Ham, who steered me safely through my foundation license, which I got in 2021. And I decided while my brain was still in learning mode, I'd carry on and work my way through the licenses. And about 2.5 years later, I managed to get my way through my full exam. Bath-based distance learning got me through my intermediate and my full. So I did them all myself. They were all exams that I took online. And yeah, that's how I got into radio.
Brilliant. And now you actually seen some of your members with them as well, with radio stations. So I guess they were kind of inspirational to you. So some of the members of your Sight Matters had sight disabilities or sight challenges, and that was an inspiration to you?
Yeah, so one of my jobs is I go out visiting members around the island and I do various assessments. But once I got into radio and I was out and about, I suddenly started to notice antennas on people's houses. It's a bit like when you get a new car, you suddenly notice everyone else who's got the same car as you. Well, I suddenly started to notice antennas on houses, and I got chatting and I realized that there were, first of all, a lot of amateur radio operators on the island here, but there were also quite a few who were visually impaired. And during my chats, I discovered that some were still operating, but some were no longer operating because their sight had stopped them from being able to do so. So I decided I'd go off and have a little bit of an investigation about this one, and got the cup of tea out and sat in front of the computer and started to do a bit of digging, because I discovered that radio was absolutely brilliant for me and was so sociable. I'm a chatter. I'm not a data mode as yet. It'll probably get me one day. So I'm a bit of a chatter, and radio is amazing. It's so sociable. You can't just pick your mobile phone up and dial a number and chat to somebody, but you can pick your radio up, put a CQ call out, and start chatting to somebody anywhere around the world. So in my investigations, I started to discover that radio, was accessible. It could be made to work. There were lots of groups around the world that were dedicated to radio amateurs with sight problems. As already been mentioned quite a few times this evening, the RAIBC are there, who are absolutely brilliant organisation. So I got in touch with those guys and girls for some assistance as well. And interestingly, as I was doing one of my calls one day, I was chatting to a guy who was a radio amateur, an existing license holder. And his partner had been wanting to join him in the hobby, but had 2 attempts at getting a foundation license and had failed. And both of these attempts were classroom-based exams, and his partner was quite a nervous person and didn't really work very well under that type of pressure. So I explained that I'd taken my exams online. I was able to do them at home. We struck up a bit of a conversation, and this person was visually impaired as well, and also dyslexic. So we contacted the RSGB, who are absolutely fantastic. They arrange for her to have a reader, and they also arrange for extra time and for diagrams to be removed from the exam. Not to remove anything or make it any easier, but to remove those diagrams from the exam so that it was easier for that person to take the exam. And I was blown away by how accommodating they were and how they wanted people to get into amateur radio, and I thought that was absolutely fantastic. That person went on to get their license and now operates on a daily basis. So that's kind of that was my experience, and that spurred me on to want to do some more. So I went to my boss and I said, any chance I might be able to get a bit of funding to have a look at getting some equipment? Contacted the local radio societies or radio groups here on the island, who have been absolutely brilliant. I managed to get some funding to buy some equipment, to do some testing with different HTs and different rigs. And I'm still testing, but we found a couple of brilliant rigs. We've got an FTDX10 that we're able to get hold of, which is hooked up to a 27-inch monitor. So somebody who's got sight that's usable, we can use that 27-inch monitor there, and that's proved to be really good. We've got an FT, I'm trying to think of what we got now, I've written it down, an FTM 500DR, which is a Yaesu, a digital rig that we can hook up to a laptop, which can run either magnification software or speech technology on there as well. So we're currently testing that with one of our users. So yeah, we're getting along all right. We're still experimenting. But it's been really positive so far. We've had one of our members who hasn't operated for quite a few years, who came in, picked the microphone up and was chatting to Europe within 10 minutes. And that was amazing to see.
That's really good and very inspirational, as well, as you said. And they were, ironically, I find it's a wonderful story that they inspired you in the end to take your radio license as well. I know that the Site Matters is a charity based on the Isle of Man and essentially for Isle of Man residents. However, you have kindly said that if anybody has any specific issues that you might be able to help with, you've offered yourself. So we're going to put your email address now on the screen, which you've kindly said offer to help in an advisory way. You've mentioned these transceivers, two particular Yaesu ones, I think. Are you familiar with any other makes of transceivers that make themselves more accessible for people with sight difficulty?
Yeah, what I've been doing is experimenting with some HTs, because we've got a really good repeater network here on the island. And I know when I was working my way through my licenses, where I am, I don't have any room to put an antenna up. A lot of our members may be in a similar situation where they're not able to put any sort of antenna up. So HT is probably a good option for them. Now, we've got an analog and also a DMR repeater network here. I've been experimenting with a cheap Baofeng DMR radio here, which you can load up with some open firmware that will make the handheld fully talking, and it's so far it's working really well. Even the simple, very very cheap analog HT, you can program up and essentially count the clicks. So you can set up repeaters on there and essentially count the clicks. And so somebody can sit in their home and if you've got a repeater network nearby, can sit in the home and still operate on there with a really cheap handheld. So as I say, we are still experimenting, but we're getting there, and so far it seems to be working quite well.
Good, thank you. I'm aware that I haven't read much actually from the YouTube chat, and I'll be covering that in a moment. Alan Reeder, though, I just saw a message come in. What about Baofeng? Well, Baofeng are one of these very low-cost Chinese manufacturers of handhelds for £20 or so, and maybe suit someone with a low budget. I just wondered if you've tried one of those with anybody who has sight difficulties?
Yeah, we have. We've tested one of those very cheap ones, and they do work pretty well. As I say, they can be set, and they do announce the channel number. It's not in a very good voice, but it will announce channel number 1, 2, 3, or 4. So that can be set on those. And as I say, with some assistance, they can be programmed up, so that channel 1 can be this repeater, channel 2 can be that. So they can be set up and used. The analog repeater here is sometimes busy, sometimes not. We all know how they can be, but the digital side of things is a lot busier. And of course, you can get out to the world on digital. So that was something I used a lot more, and I'm trying to get set up for our members here, because I think the scope and the reach of that is a lot better. If somebody's not getting any joy putting a CQ call out on analog, they'll more than likely get something if they put it out on one of the DMR channels.
Fine, thank you very much. Well, again, to you, Dave, thank you very much for sharing your story, which, as we said, is a little bit different to the other three people who've presented tonight. But it's interesting, and thank you for offering your help as well to anybody who needs help. Let's now open this up to all four of you and to you at home. We've had a couple of questions, quite a lot of comments. I think some of those have been covered by my colleagues from the RSGB, including those links to Steve's projects as well. They've all been put on the YouTube chat and on BATC, and also we'll be putting that on the show notes from this in the next few days. You'll be able to see them on the website if you didn't catch them on the screen. So if you have any questions or points or comments or anything to make, and you'd like me to take them to our team of presenters, then please enter it now on YouTube chat or BATC. And as I mentioned before, if you can put your first name and your call sign in there, that would help us as well. So talking to you all now then, I mean, you've all heard now each other's stories, and you hadn't, as far as I know, met each other before. Has this helped any of you, or given any of you ideas about how you can help others with disabilities and challenges of various kinds? What have you all heard that's maybe made you think differently? Any of you?
Well, I'm not so sure about that, but I would like to second that. Bletchley Park is an amazing place. I've been there a few times, even in my wheelchair just recently. It's a great day out, so anyone who's not been should go. And the radio centre there is pretty awesome as well.
It is, yes. I mean, the National Radio Centre, and I should just mention here as well, if you are an RSGB member, you can access Bletchley Park completely for free. You do need to download a voucher the day before, but you can get that from the RSGB website. You just sign in as a member, and then you can get a voucher to access the RSGB, to access Bletchley Park, and also the RSGB National Radio Centre, or NRC, as well. So do make use of that, because it saves a substantial sum when you enter.
I think it's fantastic, David, to just listening to everyone else's stories there. Steve coming up with writing his own software to make it work. Nigel coming up with solutions when his Zygu is getting in the sunlight and is not working. Keith out there, explaining to people how these things work. I think this is one of the brilliant things with radio. It's so innovative. Everybody is so keen to help, and I think that's a point Keith made earlier on as well. There is so much advice and guidance and help out there, and it is freely offered. That's the one thing, freely offered.
Yes, absolutely. Keith, anything to add?
It just struck me that if you look at amateur radio, it's one of the few hobbies that is open to everybody. So no matter what your disability or your ability, there are ways to get round what you think is holding you back. So be that production of training material so you can learn how to get your license better. If it's how you're going to be able to read, how you get dyscalculia, things like this, where you feel that you may struggle, there is help there for you. And it shouldn't be seen as something that holds you back. If you want to get an amateur radio license, then speak to the Radio Society of Great Britain, speak to your local clubs, and speak to other amateurs that you meet, and really go for it, because I don't think there's anything that should hold you back.
Absolutely, Keith. Well said. And we're going to put a caption up now for you at home. If you are interested in taking an exam, and you or anybody you know has a particular disability and would need some help and advice, as we've heard this evening, the RSGB does help people with disabilities or challenges, and that's the address that you should write to. So instead of just booking an exam, contact them first, exams@rsgb.org.uk as well. And I'll be giving you another contact details for other departments at the RSGB as well to help, because they're our national organisation and they're there to help people. We've said at the outset, this is an accessible hobby, but of course we appreciate that some people need some extra help. Now, we've had a question from Steve M1SDH, and I'm going to ask all of you this because you will all have a different view, I think. What's the main thing that you'd like to see radio manufacturers introduce to make their radios more accessible? And I'll go around all four of you, if I may. And as we haven't heard from Steve for a while, I'll start with you, Steve. What would be the single thing that if you could talk to the radio manufacturers into doing something, what would make it easier for you to use?
Well, I don't know about all radios. I can only speak from my ICOM radio, really. I just think better computer integration. I mean, there is still good computer integration at the moment. As you saw, I can control most things, but there are some things that are still not controllable via the serial cable even. For example, what was I looking at? Just being able to reverse the tracking with the two tuners together so that you can work linear satellites is not available via the serial cable on ICOM. So better computer integration, displays that you can plug in the back of the radio so you can export the display of your radio to your computer would be amazing. I've got a camera sitting in front of mine at the moment. Surely in this day and age I should be able to export that display and put it on my laptop. I don't think there's much else that I would add.
Well, that's some good things for them to think about there. Nigel, have you got any real wish list single wish that you wish a manufacturer would put on their radios to make them more accessible to you?
Well, I'm quite. I'm new to this, so I've not got much skill. So my radio actually suits me, if you understand what I'm saying. Obviously, if it talked to me, that would be a good thing. But equally, I understand that you can buy radios that do talk to you. So obviously, like sorry if I can't think his name. Steve, I think it was, said about exporting the data to a television. That would be a real good thing. I can see where it's coming from that would be a great thing. But yeah, as I say, I'm not really experienced enough to have anything to talk about.
No,
really.
that's okay.
So,
that's fine, Nigel. Just if you had a view, Dave, have you got any thoughts of something that when you've gone around to see your members on the Isle of Man, is there one single thing that stands out that you wish that all radio manufacturers could feature?
I mean, it's really down to just accessible features. I mean, you'll get some radios that have a video output and some that don't. And you have some radios that have an audio, a voice side of things, and some that don't. I mean, you can buy a chip that'll go in an ICOM radio that's 25 years old. So the technology's there, and it's really simple on SDR radios now to implement this. So having that feature would be really good, and it seems to be possible in a lot of radios, just not all of them. And when I've shown some of our members that the ASU connected up to a large screen, I know it won't suit everybody, but they've been blown away by how much easier it is to see than the little small screen on the front of it. So that for me, I think should be an easy fix, and it would be great to see.
Yes, I must admit voice was something on radios actually probably 10 years ago or more, was quite common, and I've actually seen them disappear, which is odd when technology has made voice synthesis so much easier, in fact. So it's a shame if manufacturers are taking it away. Let's hope they're watching this and will consider putting them back anyway. Keith, any other thoughts?
The only one I can think of, apart from making them lighter, so I don't have to try and struggle getting into the house or into the shack, is the fact that we've gone to touch screens now, and touch screens are fine if you're not visually impaired. If you're visually impaired, then it is quite difficult, and this came up when I was doing some research. It's quite difficult if you're visually impaired to actually touch the screen or see the screen. And that's where you need to have that voice control as well.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a good point. I've heard that said actually many, and just not even people who consider themselves having an official, as it were, recognised disability. They say as they get older and their sight isn't as good, that these smaller screens with lots of things happening on them with multiple choices and things is not always as good. Well, let's hope they keep making the radios traditionally as they have. I think, and several people on here have actually said, and in fact MI0LPO has said, as stated, all manufacturers should include voice readout as standard. So I think that's something that you probably all agree. We don't have any other questions from anybody, so I think that just about finishes it tonight. But I'd like to thank you all very much for joining in. And of course, we're just going to, before we go, let everybody at home know how they can contact various departments at the RSGB, who are more than willing and always want to listen, especially if there's something they can help to somebody taking an exam or putting them in touch with a club or something like that. This is the address. It's a web address, rsgb.org/main/contact. So please do get in touch with the RSGB if they can help you. Thank you very much indeed again to all of you. That concludes this webinar. So thanks once again to all of our presenters, Nigel M7FFU, Steve M0SNZ, Keith G0FEA and Dave MD0NKX. And also thanks to the team behind the scenes who put this series together and helping us tonight. Well, the theme of British Science Week this year was time, and both time and the closely related concept of frequency are, of course, of vital importance to radio communications. As part of its British Science Week activities, the RSGB announced a new challenge. Using readily available components, materials or other resources, provide a method of either measuring the frequency of a radio frequency source or signal, or providing a time reference to a radio operator or radio system. Well, there are 3 age categories you can enter, and the deadline for entries is the 1st of September 2024. Each category winner will win £150, and the results will be announced at the RSGB convention in October. For more details of the RSGB Time Challenge, please visit rsgb.org/BSW. Now, if you'd like to see details of future webinars or watch recordings of previous programs in this series, please visit us at rsgb.org/webinars, where you can also send us comments and feedback. And if you subscribe to the RSGB's YouTube channel, you'll also be notified of all upcoming Tonight at 8 webinars, as well as other new videos and presentations from the Society on a wide range of amateur radio topics. Thank you for joining us this evening, and until next time, this is David G7URP signing off and clear. Bye-bye.